Let me take you back in time, to a simpler time, a better time, to November 9th, 2010, just over a decade ago. A time before the rise and fall of loot boxes, before the normalization of video game live services, and the near standardization of the Battle Pass. Back then, you would purchase a full-price $60 game and would get the entire game. Sure, maybe a patch here and there would release for bug fixes, but games weren't completely tied to online play yet. You would pay for the cake, and paid DLC would come later as an optional icing on that cake. But that is no longer the case. With the rise of the live service, as Jim Sterling would say, developers are increasingly using this model as a crutch, an excuse used to justify games with increasingly less content at launch. More and more, games on launch day set at full retail price resemble betas or even alphas, a skeleton of a product with the promise of meat to be added to the bones later. But as we've seen time and time again with games like Anthem, Battlefield 5, No Man's Sky, and numerous others, sometimes those games take years to get more substantial content, or in Battlefield 5's case, just have the plug pulled on them prematurely by the developers due to poor initial sales. Long gone are the days of booting up a brand new game and having a plethora of bug-free content immediately at your fingertips that justifies paying the full price. And this brings me to this year's Call of Duty. As I'm sure you are quite aware by now, Call of Duty is an annual machine at this point. Activision has nearly all their developers and studios on a perpetual hamster wheel of churning out Call of Duty. They almost all help with development in some capacity, but for the past several years they've had a rotation of 3 lead developers, Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and Sledgehammer. After sticking to that rotation for this entire console generation, the status quo was blown up last year. Kotaku revealed in an article that Sledgehammer is removed as lead developer for this year's game, despite it being their turn at bat after their last game, 2017's Call of Duty World War II. And after the departure of studio founders Michael Condrey and Glenn Schofield left Sledgehammer for greener pastures, the studio seems to have lost its own identity. It has just been absorbed into the COD developer homunculus and has suffered the same fate as dozens of other Activision-owned studios, doomed to an eternity of pumping out Call of Duty maps. After years of booting up Call of Duty and seeing either the Infinity Ward, Treyarch, or Sledgehammer logo, it was strange to see no less than 6 studios listed in the opening credit sequences for Black Ops Cold War. Treyarch, Raven, High Moon, Beanox, Sledgehammer, Activision Shanghai, and Demonware. Now, I assume most of these have always worked on COD, at least a little bit, but the fact that they're giving them this much credit at the start screen implies they had a much larger hand in development this time around. So with 6 studios at the helm, you'd expect us to have an absolutely huge game at launch, right?
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
True.
Let's compare Black Ops Cold War with the original Black Ops in terms of how much content they each had at launch. Black Ops 1 had 42 weapons, 14 multiplayer maps, a 7-hour campaign, 2 zombies maps, a bonus Dead Ops arcade mode, a fully functional theater mode, and endless amounts of customization. Black Ops Cold War has 29 weapons, only 8 maps, 10 if you include Fireteam maps, the aforementioned bonus Dead Ops arcade, limited customization, a broken theater mode, 1 zombies map, and the shortest campaign in Call of Duty history, clocking in at nearly 4.5 hours. Now yes, that's better than Black Ops 4 having no campaign at all, but after 15 years of campaigns ranging from 6 to 8 hours, 4.5 is pretty insulting. How is it that a 10-year-old game had that much more content on its launch day than a game released in 2020? If you look at the trend Call of Duty has taken over the course of this console generation, you can see that with each subsequent game, there's less and less content in each one. After eschewing the traditional Season Pass model that allowed them to rake in nearly twice the amount of money on each copy, that model has been replaced with the Battle Pass model. Data miners can see that content that could have easily been the retail version at launch is cut and re-released later under the guise of free new content. But it's not free, nor is it new. It's just selling you a plain hamburger with 1 leaf of lettuce on it at full price, and then promising to mail you ketchup, mustard, onions, tomatoes, cheese, and pickles sporadically over the course of the next 10 or so months, until a new similarly plain hamburger comes out with a new name. Now let's address the virus-shaped elephant in the room. COVID. The biggest excuse I've heard from the COD community for the game's lack of launch content is the effect that the ongoing pandemic has had on productivity in every aspect of life, including game developers. There's only one problem with that. Unlike nurses or chefs or waiters or small business owners or cashiers or any numerous other jobs that require close contact with others, game developers can work from home on their computers. The nature of developing games on PCs lends itself to the ability to work remotely. I don't pretend to know how difficult game development is, and I'm sure there's more hoops to jump through when everyone is working on the same game over the internet, but that's not stopping millions of other developers from still getting the job done. CD Projekt Red is still chipping away at Cyberpunk. 343 is still making Halo Infinite. Santa Monica Studio is still working on God of War 5. Something tells me there's more going on behind the scenes with Sledgehammer and Treyarch that we aren't privy to. After I finish the campaign, it genuinely feels incomplete. The multiplayer is bare bones. The most care seems to have gone into zombies, which is the most fun it's been in years. But even that mode is overflowing with bugs that Treyarch has been spending over a week now frantically stomping on. The whole game feels like it was cut off at the knees because the game had to meet its November 13th deadline. It desperately needed a delay, but Activision wouldn't dare risk that kind of hit to its shareholders. So the more likely culprit of the development hell this game went through is poor management and a rushed timetable by Activision. How the multiplayer ultimately ends up being filled out with more content over the next 6 months or so remains to be seen, but that's not the point of this video. The point is that there's a very clear degradation in how much importance is placed on games at launch. Day one patches are basically ubiquitous across the whole industry, and now more than ever, our money is exchanged merely for the word of the developers that they promise to add to and improve a game. Full-price games do not contain the amount of content to justify paying full price anymore. We shouldn't be beta testers for multi-billion-dollar publishers. So how do we address this issue? How do we make our grievances heard that it's unacceptable for developers to hold content hostage and drip-feed it to us even after paying for it? Well, you do the only thing they hear. Speak with your wallet. Stop purchasing cosmetic items and premium Battle Pass tiers. Only engage with the content that you received from your initial purchase of the game. Send the developer a message and let them know loud and clear that we will not put up with this anymore. If you continue buying the season passes, they will continue being incentivized to give you less at launch. This sort of backlash is what changed the industry for the better during the loot box debacle in 2017 with Star Wars Battlefront 2. That organized campaign was the first domino to fall in the collapse of loot boxes as a business model. If we want to see a similar change with battle passes, let your voices be heard. It worked then and it can work again. Demand a better product from these developers and don't take your hard-earned cash for granted, especially in these uncertain times.